You're good to go.
Okay, perfect. So, hello everyone. Thank you for joining on this Sunday afternoon. What we're gonna do today together during this next half an hour is to look at a model, a concept, the one of the Androgynous Organization, which is basically applying dialectics to the future of organizations. So, and maybe in the same way than Peter, I think the attempt here is as much as possible to bring the personal and also the body within the context of this presentation. So, very simple plan. We will be looking at a quite long introduction, then the first androgynous model, then the 3D androgynous model, and future explorations. So first I'm going to start with a little disclaimer, or more an invitation. What we're going to see today is one theory of change. It's really not the theory of change. It's my own. I'm not claiming this is the truth. This is basically a work in progress that is in need of future testing. So some hypotheses have been tested, not all of them. And yeah, there is also often a temptation to want to bridge a lot of model together. I tried to resist that temptation as much as possible, but well, I'm doing my best. I'm happy to be challenged in a constructive way if you see a potential amelioration. So as much as possible for me, I want this to be like a collective endeavor. It's really like a new territory to explore. And I want this to be collective, but also without me shying away from my role as source. I'm not sure who is in the room actually, but I've shared this invitation with quite a lot of friends and people. So there might be like two types of audience, some that are very Hegelian and some who don't know much about it. And I guess this presentation will be in the middle. Also, last thing, well, I really don't like this sound, so I'm gonna fall for this. Okay, so last thing, I've done my best to remove all the hippie triggers in this presentation, but you cannot go against nature, so pardon me if there's still some left. So quick introduction. Timothée Bresse. I'm French-American based in Brussels. I'm a researcher and consultant in the field of leadership in organizational transformation. I founded the Blind Spot Project, which is a consultancy who help teams develop high trust and high performance cultures. And basically, I've been like 10 years in the field of decentralized organizing. I'm not a philosopher, I'm an economist, but I'm also addicted to thinking, like most members of Philosophy Portal, but this is an hypothesis to be verified. So the focus on which I work is really about looking at the intersection of individual and collective transformation, and looking at what is the link between self-transformation and system change. The best way to put it is the question that you find below, which is how to bridge cognitive complexity and embodied wisdom. So, well, this is a question that a lot of people have been asking themselves, and I've been also obsessed by this. For me, culture change, the angles that I like to approach, that I find are relevant. I'm not saying they're the ones, there is the one I resonate most with: religion, arts, and education. So in 2021, when I ended up on a podcast and hearing this man that maybe you heard about, talking how the future of religion will be formed at the site of sexual difference and gender wars, I really got, something in my body said, yes, that's the direction. And since 2021, I'm quite focused on that. So 10 years ago, let's start with some personal stories. I was doing an internship in Metro Manila in the Philippines. And basically, after discovering my ADHD and hypersensitivity, I had a mystical experience where basically I was presented with those two shapes playing together and dancing together. And a bit like Peter, I went through heaven and hell, or through being and nothing. The way I represent it here is like, this is being, and this is nothing. And during that time, I really tried to kind of square the circle and to get out of the being trapped by the conditioning, but without expanding the consciousness too much. At that time, I didn't have the capacity to hold the being and the nothing while becoming. So basically, in the last 10 years, I've been trying to develop this capacity as much as possible. Even this morning, I've been working on it. I'm not there yet. I'm not pretending anything, and I think it's dangerous to want to become too fast. But the sense I've been giving to those square and circle, my interpretation is really about the yang and the yin, the masculine and the feminine. So this presentation is going to go through organizational transformation and leadership questions, but in the background, it's important to remember that it's all about mother and father wound. My father was an engineer, my mother an artist, so it also kind of synchronized good with this. Basically looking at mediating those two together, after that experience, I went to India, and back from India, I managed to start two projects, one artistic and one about the future, about social entrepreneurship, the first social entrepreneurship movement, student movement in Belgium. So the intention is really of these parallel work is really about finding synthesis at some point. So the driving question that I have between all of this is also inspired by the dialogue between Raven and Cadell, how to explore spiritual androgyny while honoring biological or sexual differences. So here it's really about how can we benefit from the wisdom of gender deconstruction without going too far, and the wisdom of what is feminine and masculine across time and space since centuries and millenaries. So the argument I'm going to try to present today is that, excuse me, so you can read through a continuous process of collective shadow work, androgynous organization are an effective container to integrate and develop masculine and feminine polarities within us, organization, and society at large. So it's really about developing this capacity to heal ourselves, trauma and nervous system, in order to take the best, leave the rest of of both worlds. So what is the androgynous model? It's basically dialectics applied to societal, organizational, and individual transformation. Yeah, I don't know who's in the room, but okay. So that's a bit my DIY representation of the pendulum of Hegel. And starting with the societal level, what is an androgynous society? Well, it's one that takes the best and leave the rest of both modern and postmodern times. So this has been already largely covered through concepts like metamodernism or the solar punk narrative to kind of reconcile nature and technology. So if we look at the organizational level, and this is really the core of my work, we look at this pendulum swing between basically the top-down models, hierarchical, traditional hierarchy, and centralized, versus the more bottom-up, decentralized, and participative models. Or also on the left, the more startup mindset, and on the right, the more activist mindset. So I wanted to put a lot of nice logos, but I didn't have the time. My experience has been for the last 10 years to actually go through a lot of different communities and collectives, various types, to look at what are actually the best practices and ideas that makes a community successful. And I've been in various positions, either founder, as a contributor, external consultant, or a different level of involvement of membership. So the approach I'm going to present today really has been developed over 10 years of exploring those kind of pioneering decentralized organizations. So I'm not going to go through the shadows of top-down traditional hierarchies, because I think we all know it too well. These are some of the typical blind spots that I've been encountering in my exploration. So I'm going to let a bit of time for you to go through them, because I think it's important. And maybe look at which one resonate the most with your experience. So, well, the number one blind spot is really about shadow hierarchies. And it's normal. It's like non-hierarchical structures like cooperatives, DAOs, or using structures like holacracy or sociocracy. I really try to move away from the traditional hierarchy, but we're going to see, as you see, it's not always easy. So what is the goal of androgynous organizations? Well, it's to take the best and leave the rest of both top-down centralized and bottom-up decentralized models. Okay, so basically, androgynous organizations are collectives that have the capacity to dance between both polarities, depending on the context. They really have the capacity to choose, to analyze when and how to use both of the polarities. And I'm gonna go through some of them. So clear direction and dynamic leadership. So that's sometimes a challenge if everyone wants to lead and say that there is a direction, we have to go there, we don't know where to go. So finding the right balance is really a skill. Healthy competition and deep collaboration. This is quite important because working in the field of collaborative economy and sharing economy for the last 10 years, there's a big shadow of competition. And what my conclusion is that by making explicit the competition between people, you actually enable real collaboration to happen. And what I mean by healthy competition, it is explicit, respectful, and playful. Competence hierarchy. So this is the question really of natural hierarchy versus domination hierarchies. And it's really an art to use this while maintaining psychological safety. I'm aware I'm talking a bit fast, so I'm gonna slow down. Clear boundaries and agile capacities, and maybe the most important for me is really impact at scale and value alignment. We see a lot of projects today who are highly aligned, but at a very small scale, and that we see that it's very hard for them to maintain value alignment while growing. And well, we'll go deeper in this, but it's about really accepting a temporary misalignment to allow the growth and then to come back to alignment. But this is sometimes hard when you're in an environment where there's alignment police, as I call it. So now we're going to look at androgynous leadership. So how to develop this capacity to dance between the more leadership polarity and the more followership one. This is really essential because within a system, if all nodes of the system have this capacity of dancing between both polarities, the energy is going to flow through the system in a way more effective way, and it's going to be much more resilient. So what is some more detailed on va dire, behavior of androgynous leadership? I'll let you go through it. Okay. So, well, that would be nice to interact with people and say what's clear or not, but we can do this during the Q&A. So what are the limitations of this two-dimensional model? Well, at the individual level, it kind of fixes leadership as an active modus, while being a leader also requires a form of receptivity. And being a follower is not necessarily passive. On the organizational level, what about the capacity for operations, for having a clear direction? And what about the connection with the deeper purpose? And regarding societal level, what about the pre-modern and what about the animistic? So this is why I invite you to do a kick in the pendulum so that the pendulum is not 2D anymore, but takes a shape. And the idea is really about differentiating the active and the receptive feminine and masculine. So let's start by applying this model to society. I'm very grateful for Lee and Rachel Anderson for helping me also building this presentation and being this inspiration for, I would say, the societal level. The work that she did has been a big help for my own work. And basically what she does compared to metamodernism, we're talking about metamodernity here, it's about integrating the animistic and pre-modern level. So quite quickly and in a very simplistic way, this is my own interpretation of her work in a very simple way. I mean, what's important here though is to connect that. You see there's like a kind of quadruple yin yang in the middle, and you can see how both like era are actually linked to one of this color and one of this quadruple yin yang dimension. So applying this to androgynous organizations, what do we have? We have basically 4 key aspects that I believe androgynous organizations can bring together and which doesn't really exist today. It's very hard to find an organization who can combine all of these different aspects. So having, radical innovation. So it's about being connected to a vision that is truly life-serving. Then having the capacity to actually receive and would say contain this energy, which connects more to the pre-modern, the receptive masculine, and then to be able to give a direction and to manifest through the more startup modern active masculine aspect of things, and have a clear impact to then be able to basically take care of the people, also having a culture which is really empowering and healthy. So in the whole presentation, I'm going to start always with here. It's like it's going that way, so that you have, there's an arrow missing here. So moving from radical innovation to clear direction to impact to culture of care or high trust, because I believe that highly aligned cultures are actually cultures of high trust where care is definitely present. So one of a core aspect of my work, and our work. I don't know if Bruno is in the room, but he's the developer that basically helps me develop the collective inner compass, which is a tech tool that basically allows to measure the level of integration of these dimensions within an organization by looking at the value practice or value action alignment of these organizations. And that's a case inspired by a team I've been working in Berlin. So androgynous leadership. This is really important because, as Jerry Colonna said, the culture of an organization grows in the shadow of its founder. So if you don't have a process in place to actually actively design the culture of your organization, you are heading to some potential troubles. So looking at the individual level of this kind of 3D androgynous model, it's really about developing a form of emotional agility. And I think this slide is pretty key. It is inspired by Peter Koenig, but this combination of all elements, I haven't seen it elsewhere. Peter talks a lot about manifesting, knowing when to manifest the vision, when to develop the people. But I think looking at the four capacities is really important. So capacity to yin to connect to the vision, yang to set clear boundaries, yang manifest, and receptive yin, take care of the people and develop the culture. So some of the more going in more details into what those three aspects represent at the individual level. At the active feminine, we can see here that it's really about the vision, the intuition, wisdom. Receptive masculine, about being centered, decisive, providing. I'm not going to read the slide, but you can read as well as me. So I think the one super important element though here is that in most organizations that I've been working with, there is a lack here at this level. Why is that? Because I mean, a majority of them actually has been founded by men, and in kind of like decentralized space, it's very difficult for men to actually set clear and explicit boundaries because they're afraid of being accused of toxic masculinity and these kind of things. So basically helping men to stop repressing their anger and using their anger to actually set boundaries is really a big challenge if we want these organizations to have an impact, because most of them are pretty chaotic because of that and have quite a low impact, or have an impact which is low with low alignment, which is potentially a negative impact. So the core of my work is really about bridging cognitive complexity, high level concept with a notion of embodied wisdom. And the attempt here is really about doing this bridge as most ambitious as possible. And the idea here is to connect those four dimensions with actually emotions that we can all feel right now, potentially in our body. So capacity to master fear might unlock your capacity to connect to your source. Capacity to master joy is actually to create safe space and safe containers for people to develop themselves. Capacity for anger is like radical action. And capacity for sadness, being in touch with your sadness, is something that's going to support you in developing the people. So future explorations. So I've been discussing with Cadell. I mean, he's been giving me some tips there about what are the next steps. I didn't have the time to explore everything. I feel I could spend just 3 years studying this whole thing. But these are the direction. I think that the most important one is to, as Cadell told me, that Deleuze has created this anti-Oedipal move, and it's about bringing back Oedipus. So he talks about the global brain. For me, it's bringing it first in the organizations that will manifest the global brain. Then the question of techno-capitalism and the father wound. So this is a more, well, this is, yeah, Cadell who brought that. Maybe you can go in more detail, but for me, at a personal level, it's really about recognizing that killing the father is not about defeating capitalism, but it's about recognizing oneself. So, oh, it's not moving. Yeah, so this research about the androgynous organization is part of a larger project, the Blind Spot Project. And you can see that here you have an example of the collective in a compass who measures from 0 to 100% the level of value practice alignment or your degree of integration of these androgynous aspects. Collective shadow work is a very important part of it. I see it as a bit like in trauma work, you have the awareness, acceptance, responsibility. So for me, the compass is really the awareness. Acceptance, really the collective shadow work is the transformation, is the core of the work. And here you can think about online circling practices like warm data lab or collective presencing, or offline activities that we're doing is really about feeling inside the body this dance between light and shadow, yin and yang, and learning to integrate these polarities within us. Men's work, super important, key, and women's work, obviously. And psychedelic coaching is also part of this project. Well, that's a Nietzschean sentence that I think is really key. My approach to the way I work mostly is through the body. So William Reich is a bit kind of the forgotten piece here for different reasons. But the relationship with the embodied experience and this notion of body armoring from William Reich is really key. Alexander Lowen also. So these are more the lens I'm using, and I want to explore more in the future. Okay. Well, 2 minutes left. That's on time. Conclusion. So come back to Hegel, because we didn't talk so much about him. I believe that freedom can be provided by an organization that have this framework where individuals can realize their androgynous potential or emotional agility while serving a creative purpose. And so I would say, this is a bit pretentious, I would put this. The absolutes wouldn't be this, is it this capacity for doing continuously this work of collective shadow work? This is an hypothesis. And when I put binary and non-binary, I really put the spotlight on one side, men's work, women's work, for really honoring biological sexual differences, the binary side. And the non-binary, it's really about exploring this more androgynous capacities and gender fluidity is a big word, but you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I mean, the last sentence is that through emotional maturity, developing emotional agility, and integrate the best of these 4 dimensions that I mentioned before. And it's 59, and here we are. I wanna, yeah, so these are some of the contacts that you can reach me at. I want to say a huge thank you to Cadell for supporting me in this process. Well, yeah, it's really, I really feel that Hegelian approach of organizational transformation is the next step. And I'm really happy to be working on this with Philosophy Portal. Thank you to Lean, Rachel, Anderson also. Thank you to Simon Grant, I think that is in the room and who really helped me also. And thank you to Jana Milbau, the love of my life, who's supporting me with all these topics on a quite constant basis for a few years. Okay, and last but not least, I'm gonna give you this link, which is a Telegram group, which is that you can join if you're interested to go deeper into research. It's basically, yeah, this is where people exchange about all these topics, and I would be very happy to see you there. Okay, been talking enough now.
Yeah, so you finally decided to stop being a toxic masculine patriarch with your mono speech. No.
Mansplaining.
we have 15 minutes for questions, so please raise your hand and let's try and get to as many as we can, because there's a lot of really important material there that Timothy was going through. And of course, I encourage you to check out that Telegram group if you're interested in getting more involved with his work. I'm very interested in the next steps that you propose there. It made me wish we could fund some sort of doctoral research project, because like all of that stuff there would be like a fantastic. I mean, you need 4 years to explore that stuff, right? Oh, you're on mute there, Timothy.
If you have funding for this, I'm open to the possibility, Cadell.
No, that's what I was like, yeah, I wish we could fund graduate students.
Maybe in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, that would be fantastic. So so if this brought up anything for anyone, I mean, just raise your hand. It could also just be not a question, but just a reflection, something that came to your mind. Jorge, go for it.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Sorry, I made it quite late, so I missed a lot of it. Is this a question about the body harmony from rage? I think you mentioned. What is really this about? Is this about like some sort of like fitness thing, or just like a armor, like you have a armor, you're wearing a armor? How does that work?
So. So I'm really not an expert, but for me, Jung is about the collective unconscious. Freud is more about like Oedipus, and Reich is more about the body. And for me, it's about combining all these approaches together. But what your question is about is the question of body armoring, and the hypothesis of Wilhelm Reich is that your muscles, your musculature that has been designed by your traumas and life experience is designing your character and your personality, and that by de-armoring step by step every part of your body, or in another more new way, nervous system defragmentation, by going through all of this, you can actually reclaim a more free identity or free personality.
Okay, sort of like the relationship between the body and the glitches of the body and the trauma, how it kind of like, yeah, can affect us. Okay, yeah, interesting. Sounds very, very cool. I'd like to look into it. Definitely. Yeah. What's the name? Well, I'll go to the link that you sent.
I think Alexander Lowen is really is the one who went just after him, who was his student, and he's the one I think who pushed the most complete approach regarding this branch.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
I guess I'll ask a personal question. Is you know, you often highlight the shadow aspects of contemporary organizations, like, so for example, you know, emphasizing the collective, but maybe shying away from the role as a leader or something like that. And you sort of reflected on that in a personal way, as well as what sort of practices or what sort of disposition do you think are important to confront these shadow aspects and work through them in a way that's a balancing of the androgynous organization, as opposed to a oscillation to another extreme?
So you're saying, like, basically, how do you relate to this shying away from position of source?
as an example, like I mean, there's a few others that you bring up that you seem to suggest there's a, like, for example, shadow aspects of healthy competition and a collaborative emphasis.
Yeah. So for me, this is where the collective in a compass is really important, because it's going to basically scan the culture at the collective level. And I believe that the most effective way to impact culture of an organization is to work on the shadow of the founder. So by scanning the culture of the collective, you will inform basically the founder on which type of work he or she needs to do, on which level of integration he or she needs to focus. The collective in a compass is really about telling you that if you go in that direction, both at individual and organizational level, you will have the highest return on investment in terms of transformation. So this is one aspect, but how to stop shying away from, well, on a personal level, I think it's all about the relationship for me with the father figure. So relationship with my relationship to light, and the way that on a personal level I feel so much comfortable in the shadow. This is my playground, and right now, and which I'm doing today also with you guys, is actually doing this effort of moving to the light in a way where my inner child is not gonna sabotage, because I've established an inner relationship between the adult and the child inside of me, mainly through the work of William Reich and psychedelic therapy also.
Fantastic. Michelle, did you want to jump in here?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for the presentation, Timothy. And I'm so happy to be here for day 2. I wanted to ask a question about, with the shadow work. I mean, I think what's fascinating to me and hard to maybe grapple with is the fact that, somebody has to kind of be open to doing their own shadow work, right? You can't like make people do that, really. Sorry, my little one is with me. And so I guess what I mean to say is, like, I wonder, it's great if people want to do that, right? Or are open to that as leaders. But if it's difficult once people are already adults and they're leaders and they're not doing that work, right? That's where we can kind of see we'd run into problems. So it makes me think about like what your ideas are, Timothy, on like conscious parenting, if you've heard of that before. Because if you can maybe work on some of these things on the child level, like when, if you're able to sort of do things or have a method of raising children and teaching children from the younger years where they're not having to develop like so much trauma. Like, I don't think we can avoid it entirely, right? But like, I wonder a lot about the theories of raising children when it comes to communities and things like that, because it's not always something I feel is talked about a lot. Like, we might talk about it at the adult level. So I wonder if you could maybe already do the work, possibly at least the foreground for it, while humans are still children, right? Then, I mean, still children, you know what I'm saying? Like, biologically, their ages are younger. Then maybe that helps them to be more open to shadow work when they become adults, So anyways, I don't know if you've heard of conscious parenting, but I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, Timothy. I hope that made sense. I can rephrase my question if need be. And thank you so much for your presentation.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. So it's funny because the first thing that came to mind when you were talking about those leaders who are not doing their shadow work or something, there's a temptation to put like, I'm doing my shadow work, you're not doing your shadow work. Like, it's kind of binary view. I think that everyone does its shadow work to a certain degree. I think having a child is a massive rite of passage for people, and then being confronted with the mirroring of the child and their own shadows. I'm not so familiar with conscious parenting, and I don't have children, so I cannot talk from experience. But I think that what you named about the willingness to avoid the trauma, I think that's a dangerous thing, because I believe that the trauma makes you who you are, and in the healing lies basically your what you're gonna do on this planet. So, of course, not creating unnecessary trauma. That's obvious, But I think looking at fragmentation in a way which is not negative, and I think that's the whole point of also Hegel, is that here we have like we have a pendulum where you have like wholeness on one side and fragmentation on the other side. So yeah, trauma, I think, are decisive in creating your personality. Regarding education and looking at children, how can you avoid this? Honestly, I don't know. For me, it's all about compassion. For me, compassion is the more compassion capacity you have, the more shadow will reveal. Because it stays hidden, the unconscious stays hidden until it feels safe enough to be revealed. So for me, doing the shadow work is important, but compassion needs to be at the same level. Otherwise, it leads to re-traumatization. So having the courage and the compassion, those two capacities, like teaching children to develop those polarities, I think this is an interesting way to go.
We have enough time, or 4 minutes. There's enough time if anyone else has a reflection to offer or a question for Timothy. Michelle, you wanna go again?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I hope it's okay if I
It's
jump
okay.
in. I want to say thank you so much for your response, Timothy. That was wonderful. And another question that comes to mind is today there's a lot of new information, which is wonderful, new opportunities to learn about healing and things like that. Sometimes I do wonder if how do I put this? Sometimes I wonder though if there's something that's almost even traumatic about this itself, because you hear about all of these potentials, right? And like, oh wow, I could potentially be de-armored, I could potentially be, and I'm saying that's wonderful, right? But at the same time, it can feel like, where do I begin, or what's the right way, or how do I find the de-armoring people, or can I do this myself? And there's also so many things like craniosacral therapy, myofascial therapy. There's so many different things that the body that can do with therapy, that's not just that connects the mind and body more. So anyway, I hope my question makes sense, but I'm curious to what you would say to that, Timothy.
Yeah, you're touching a very important topic, and for me, it connects to two dimensions, what I call spiritual bypassing and psychological bypassing. But I think the consumption of therapeutic modalities and psychotechnologies. I'm an addict of psychotechnologies. I'm aware of it. I'm doing my best to stop going into that, because actually it's another form of addiction and consumption. And personally, I've done this shift from spiritual bypassing. I spent 6 months in a Zen monastery, almost took the monastic path. And I did the pendulum, like, oh, they're all repressing anger, they're not expressing their masculinity. And I did a lot of trauma work, a lot of this. But then the dangerous psychological bypassing is people that are stuck in their trauma and like going in round and going again and again. And sometimes you need to step back and connect to the light again. So finding the balance between the two, the spiritual and the more psychological body, I would say actually sky and earth, without being too hippie, sorry for that, is the way to go.
That's great. I think that was the first time you snuck in some hippie stuff there, Timothy. So I think you did a pretty good job of avoiding the hippie, I think. That's great. That's great. I just wanted to say,
Thanks so much for the response.
There's about 1 minute left, so I just wanted to say quick, your project's called the Blind Spot Project, and I think you already mentioned, it's kind of easy, or can be easy, to point out someone else's blind spot, and very difficult to take it on board when someone else is pointing out. It's not, I think, almost by definition, when someone points out a blind spot in someone else, there's a temptation to just resistance. So how do we navigate those dynamics of resistance? And I don't have a solution for this, but
compassion, because
yeah.
if you put the shit in the face, it's not going to work. It's going to lead to re-traumatization, and the shadow is going to be buried even deeper. So how the blind spots are being revealed, this is really key. And this is where the person that holds the space and their own alignment and the work they've done is critical. There's the tool, the process, and all the techniques, but the person that holds the space, how much of work he or she has done, I think is very important.
Fantastic. So I'm gonna just ask if there's one last reflection you'd like to leave us with before I stop the recording. What would that be?
Well, the thing that comes to mind is really about this possibility, and I think that I've talked into my mystical experience between being and nothing. For me, which is being all powerful and then being totally powerless, and having this capacity to actually hold both of these energy inside of us, instead of going from one to the other, but being both powerful and vulnerable at the same time, like is an art. And I think that's really something I would invite people to look at, because I was stuck a lot in the either or, but we can do both. We can do both. Thank you, Cadell. Thank you so much.